nothing like it. The madness is here. As we mentioned, UConn, the #1 overall seed. Joining the Huskies on that top line, Houston, Purdue, as we like to say, North Carolina. That tournament begins with the first 4 tomorrow. The first round follows that on Thursday. And let's welcome in college basketball analyst Matt McCall joining us here on set to talk about all of the madness. A Florida Gator grad.
I love when you bring up back-to-back. We got to bring up back-to-back.
You got to remind everybody.
Yeah. I was a part of those staffs in 06 and 07. So we don't necessarily, as Gators, we have something deep down inside where we're like really not rooting for UConn. Right. We don't want to see it happen, but wouldn't be shocked if it did.
It's something we want to hold on to.
I was going to say, though, what's the toughest thing about back-to-back? Why is it so difficult to do that? When we saw the Duke teams do it, obviously the Gators did it, but it's hard to do that 2 years in a row. Well,
I think you look at UConn and you look at the Florida Gators from 06 and 07, completely different teams. The Gators had everybody back. Every single starting member of the starting 5 returned that year. So you're dealing with these expectations. The first year in 2006, unranked, busted out of the gates, went 17-0, ultimately went 10-6 in the SEC, found a way to win the SEC tournament, and then got hot in the NCAA tournament and won a national championship. Come back the following year. Now you got all these expectations, and expectations are one of the hardest things to deal with in all of sports. The difference between UConn and Florida is they have a different starting 5. They didn't start the season ranked #1 in the country. They built that up, and it's been outstanding what they've done. But you also got to get a little bit lucky when it comes to this tournament, and you can't have a bad night. And that's what UConn, they haven't been in close games really at all. We saw them lose to Creighton on the road, but outside of that, the games haven't even been close. How do they handle adversity when the game gets close?
Yeah, it feels like they can deal with that slow grinder. They can deal with a high-scoring track meet. Either way, whatever kind of game is out there, UConn seems to be able to be up to that test. But let's talk about the bracket in a team that potentially has the easiest road to the Final Four. Because you talked about it, you can be the best team on paper, have the best regular season, but you do need a little bit of luck sprinkled in there. It has to go your way. But when you're looking at the bracket, Matt, in your opinion, who has the easiest path to a Final Four?
I got to go with North Carolina, and because I'm looking at UConn's bracket, and I'm saying UConn could possibly have to play Auburn, who just won the SEC tournament yesterday in the Sweet 16. And to me, the biggest snub in the entire bracket was Iowa State. Iowa State, how they played coming down the stretch in the best league in the country, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people would agree with this. Iowa State gets the 2 seed in UConn's bracket. They could have easily gotten the 1 seed, but it goes to Carolina. So I'm looking at Carolina's path. I think they by far got the easiest path, and this is what the entire country wants to see. They want to see Caleb Love in Arizona play against his former school in North Carolina to go to the Final Four. I like Carolina's path. I think they got the easiest path out of all the 1 seeds.
It's interesting you mentioned Iowa State could have gotten that 4th #1 seed. They didn't even get the best 2 seed.
They did not even get the best 2 seed.
To your point, which is,
and to think the fact to go to the Final Four, Iowa State's going to have to go to Boston to play against UConn. If UConn gets there, UConn's path. Think about this: UConn in the second round could face FAU. You could say what you want about FAU. They had an up and down year. Expectations, we just alluded to it. They had all kinds of expectations. You go back to their first round game last year, it's a 1-point win against Memphis. Then they play Fairleigh Dickinson in the second round. So we're talking about you got to get a little bit lucky. But FAU still has that talent. So UConn could possibly play, if FAU can get past Northwestern, they're going to play FAU in the second round, who went to the Final Four that has everybody back. Like, that's just, UConn's road is definitely not easy to repeat and go back-to-back. If they do it, us Gators, we have to tip our hat to them because that's really impressive with the road they have here.
Yeah, we can no longer,
hold on to it as long as you can. Yeah, for sure. Got it there. In terms of player to watch, it's actually in that same bracket with Tar Heels there. We could potentially see a matchup there. It's the reigning WAC Player of the Year, and Bryce Drew's got a good one.
He's got an outstanding one, and I think it's one of the best stories in all of college basketball in Tyon Grant Foster. Started his career at a junior college, transfers then to Kansas, spends a year at Kansas. Then he goes to DePaul. He collapsed on the floor in a game at DePaul. Now he goes to Grand Canyon. And Coach Drew has an unbelievable team, a really, really good team, 29 or 24 wins on the year. He's getting 20-6. He's got size, he's got athleticism, he shoots it from behind the three-point line. He's the type of guy that can completely take over a game with his athleticism, with his size. You could put the ball in his hands with the game on the line and put him in the middle ball screen, and he will make the right play. He is an electric player to watch. Watch out for this Grand Canyon team, and he's a guy I would keep my eye on in the tournament.
Now, when it comes to first-round matchups, and it's crazy because, you know, last year we saw FDU and that huge first-round upset over Purdue. It's like the madness starts right out the gate. But what first-round matchup are you most looking forward to, Matt?
I'm really looking forward to Clemson and New Mexico. I think New Mexico is riding high right now. Richard Pitino. I think the reason that Rick Pitino turned the invite down to the NIT is to go watch his son coach in the NCAA tournament. I mean, what a moment for a father and son, one of the greatest coaches of all time, to get an opportunity to watch his son coach in the NCAA tournament. But when you look at New Mexico, you're talking about Mashburn and House. They combined to score 49 points in that Mountain West title game. Those guards are electric. This is a matchup in the first round for me that I think is going to be a lot of fun to watch.
You know, it's interesting because Jerry Palm has these home court heroes in New Mexico at the Pit, which we all love right there, and Nebraska. Teams are like that. They couldn't find a way to win away from home, and New Mexico's been able to do that, especially out in Vegas for the Mountain West tournament. You've got another game in the first round that's really catching your eye there, Oregon and South Carolina.
Oregon, South Carolina. I think South Carolina, or the New Mexico game was my upset pick, but the Oregon, South Carolina, I think South Carolina got snubbed on their seed. I really believe that. You look at the body of work what Lamont Paris did in the non-league. He just won 13 games in the non-league, just one loss. 13-1. You know, their only loss was at Clemson, who's another NCAA tournament team. Coach Paris, he has balance on this team. We're talking about Michi Johnson, Talon Cooper, BJ Mack was a terrific transfer. I really, really like this matchup. And you look at Oregon. Oregon won 6 straight towards the end of December, beginning of January. They end the season here. They win the Pac-12 as the Pac-12 just evaporates. It goes away. They win the last Pac-12 tournament, riding high, 4-game win streak, playing their best basketball. Dana Altman knows how to win games in March. That's exactly what he does. So I got my eye on that game strictly, too, because I think South Carolina got a little bit snubbed with the 6th seed.
All right, and of course, March Madness, we love the Cinderella stories. It's like one of the biggest reasons we love March Madness. And I know you kind of already alluded to this team, but Grand Canyon, that is your Cinderella team, your pick for this go around.
Well, this one was hard for me.
Okay.
Because I'm looking at McNeese State, and I'm looking at Will Wade is now back on the sidelines and back coaching, and only to lead McNeese to 30 wins. But Grand Canyon, 29-4 on the season. I had them early on in a game for CBS out in Arizona, and I was mesmerized by the talent that's out there on the floor. They got a guy named Ray Harrison who runs the show. We already alluded to Tyon Grant Foster. They have another guy named Gabe McLaughlin that's just mismatched nightmare at the power forward spot. They play really, really hard. One of those 4 losses, it just happened to be South Carolina out in Arizona. That's how good South Carolina is, and they got them as a 6th seed. I can't believe it, but this team is dangerous. Coach Drew, going through what he went through at Vanderbilt, he is now taking this team to multiple NCAA tournaments. It's so impressive to see. Watch out for them. I got them going to the Sweet 16. I got Grand Canyon making a run all the way to the 16. I think they beat St. Mary's, and then Alabama and Charleston. It's going to be a bit of a track meet in the first round between those 2 teams, but I just don't know if Alabama has the defense to get to a Sweet 16.
We know GCU, by the way, won't be like deer in the headlights. They've got a little bit of tournament pedigree. They won't be overly phased about what they're able to do. And I also, we'll talk about this at a different day, the small school matchups like a Gonzaga, McNeese State, St. Mary's, and Grand Canyon. We got to put them in different matchups so we can certainly see it there. All right, pick to win. You had talked a little bit about leaning teams that you really liked. We talked a lot about UConn here. But in terms of the pick to win, where are you going?
I have to go UConn. As hard as it is for me to say, but I have to go UConn. And the reason is they have more balance on the offensive end of the floor this season than they did last season. You look at last season, it was really 3 guys for them, led by Sonogo. Now they've got 5 guys averaging double figures. They've got Donovan Clingan on the inside. We know what Cam Spencer's been doing. Tristan Newton, best player in the Big East all season. The balance on the offensive end of the floor, they're a scarier team on that end, and they haven't lost their toughness. They haven't lost the desire to win, all the things that Coach Hurley's about. Now, they've got the toughest road, and the tournament committee did them no favors, but it's hard for me to pick against them. It's really hard. It is hard. You know, the Gators, we want to keep chopping with that back-to-back, but I got to give credit to UConn. They are, and my biggest concern with them is just they haven't faced much adversity up to this point in time. Even a loss on the road at Creighton, they just haven't seen it. They didn't see a ton of it in the tournament, even though there were some exciting games and some theatrics on the sidelines between coaches. But that's my only concern. If they get into a tight game, which they have not been in, will they find ways to make plays? And I believe they will.
All right.
So, Matt, really quickly, who is your Final Four then? You have UConn winning it all. Who are the other teams you think are going to be there?
Well, you guys just alluded to before I jumped on here. You haven't even filled out your bracket here. Now you got me picking the Final Four.
We're asking you.
There's a game that I have circled, and I think it's really going to determine a Final Four pick for me. And this is, again, as a Florida alum, as someone worked there for 11 years, this is hard. I look at Kentucky's second-round game versus Texas Tech. And I think if Kentucky beats a physical Texas Tech team in the second round, I think it's going to catapult them to the Final Four. So BBN, it's hard for me to say this, but I have BBN in the Final Four. I'm going to go with Purdue. I think Purdue is coming back on a mission. I think Braden Smith, Fletcher Loyer, those guys took a lot of heat for the reason they lost. The recipe for Purdue, please don't turn it over. And you can't go and shoot 20% from the three-point line or give up a boatload of threes, which is what happened against FDU last year. So I'm going with Purdue. I like Carolina because they got the easiest road, and I'm going UConn. So I did pick the Cats. I did pick BBN, but I think that second-round game, if they get there and they're able to knock off Texas Tech, I think it's going to catapult them and give those young guards a lot of confidence.
Matt, we certainly appreciate it, getting us pumped for March Madness, and really it takes a lot for a Florida Gator to pick UConn to win it all and Kentucky in the Final Four. That is commendable. Right here on CBS, we got you covered. You can watch every men's game live March 19th. That is tomorrow through April 8th. Watch all the action on CBS.